Hey, strong people, how's it going? Kalle Beck here, bringing you another Strong Talk podcast. A lot going on in the strongman world right now. Britain's Strongest Man just wrapped up, and I watched it live on Flow Elite. It was a great contest, and Eddie Hall won his fourth straight, which is a record, and winning four total Britain's Strongest Man titles ties him for most ever with, I believe, Jamie Reeves. He won by almost 15 points, which was very decisive. Lawrence Chalet was second, and Graham Hicks was third. Graham Hicks is making a comeback. Oh, I wouldn't say a comeback. He's coming back from a little layoff due to some injuries. I think the last contest I saw him do was maybe the log lift world championships. Back when he broke that record. He might have done worlds after that. I don't really remember, but he had, I believe, it over a year off and came back and still made the podium at Britain's Strongest Man, which is a very competitive contest. So congrats to Graham. Eddie looks like he's improving very quickly. He's huge now. Well, even bigger. He's always been big. He's 420 pounds, which is incredible. But he was also just a couple tenths of a second off of Lawrence Chalet's yoke time. And if anyone knows anything about strongman, Lawrence Chalet might be the best in the world at the yoke. That's very arguable. If he has yoke in a contest, like let's say we're at the World Strongest Man finals and there's a yoke, it's a good sure bet that he might win, or he's at least going to get top 2 or 3. He holds the record in the car walk. And Eddie, I think Laws did it in 10.1, and Eddie was like 10.43 or 10.34, like real close, less than half a second. So if Eddie's improving his moving events like that, and the World's Strongest Man events favor him, I think it's going to be a close. He might just win it. It's very possible. Depending on the events, hopefully nothing involving grip. You have some more. I have a sinking suspicion that there's going to be a max log in the final. Let's do some rumors right now before we talk to this week's guest, Bryan Benzel, pro strongman. Judging by what I see on social media, I'm thinking there's going to be a max log in the World's Strongest Man finals. Also, what I have seen, a couple of the British athletes saying that World's Strongest Man is going to take place a little earlier again this year, sometime around April or May. Last year I think it was done in August. The year before it was in April. And I'm thinking, and the British athletes tend to find out sooner than everyone else because, the Giants Live is out of England. So they tend to find out, and that's usually how it goes. That's kind of disappointing that it's going to be moved back and it's not at a consistent time, because that's probably going to be somewhat of a shock to some of the athletes, and it's going to limit the amount of Giants Live qualifiers for wild cards, or for new people is a better way to put it, to get back into the finals. It's also closely after the Arnold Classic, which is coming up in March. And so there's going to be some beat up bodies. Of course, Eddie Hall is not competing in the Arnold Classic, so that's going to favor him. He's going to be pretty fresh. What else is going on? This is the end of January. You're probably listening to this in February, so thanks for all of the support for everyone listening to this podcast. We surpassed 20,000 monthly downloads, so that was a big boost, and that's something I've been aiming for a long time. Of course, having Big Z Zadrunas Savickas on helped a lot with that, but it's not like there was 18,000 people that listened to that episode and then a couple hundred every other. It's going up every week, and I'm so thankful for that. Thank you guys all so much. The Starting Strongman training templates have been going well. You can use code STRONGTALK at strongmanprogram.com to sign up for those and get a free month. Starting in February, the price goes up from $10 a month. It's going to go up to $20. So early bird gets the worm, and they're locked in for life. So if you sign up right when you hear this, You get a free month, and you're locked in for as long as you want to follow the program at $10 a month instead of $20 or $100 a year. So that's a huge savings. Appreciate that, and just enjoy this show with Bryan Benzel. He's a heavyweight pro, strongman, competed at World's Strongest Man. We talk about that process and how it was just like real last minute on if he even knew what he was doing. Peek into the lives of, how it is to be a pro strongman, what he has coming up, and you can enjoy this interview. If you want to follow Bryan, it's Benzel on Instagram, and he's a real good guy, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation. So episode 64, might be 63, might be 65. I can never keep track, but it's pretty cool that this keeps going. I'm loving doing these podcasts, doing these interviews with some of the best in the business. I learn a lot, and we have some great ones coming up, and I appreciate you guys for listening. I'll stop rambling. You're probably fast forwarding past this like I do at all the beginnings of podcasts. Here's our guest, Bryan Benzel. Welcome to the Strong Talk Podcast. I am Kalle Beck with this week's guest, Bryan Benzel, World's Strongest Man competitor. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Kalle?
It's all right. Yeah, does it feel good to, hear that you're a World's Strongest Man competitor now?
It feels good to hear it. Sometimes it doesn't even feel real still, I guess. I don't know. I think that's kind of something that pushes a lot of people that get to that level. It's just that you never feel like you've made it.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, yeah, it's nice. It's nice knowing that I've been there. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but not necessarily overly thrilled with how I did this year. So now just working to make sure I get back and improve on it.
Yeah, just a perennial World's Strongest Man competitor does sound a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a little nice ring to it.
But yeah, just want to get into a little bit about yourself. You won your ASC Pro card. Where do you live at and train out of?
I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I started training pretty much at all, really seriously, at Job's Still Jungle. It's Jesse Job's private gym. It's a 2-car garage behind his house in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is just right across the river, like literally 10 minutes from my house. I also train at Omaha Barbell during the week. Jesse's is mostly, event stuff on the weekends, and Omaha Barbell during the week now.
Yeah, I've Jesse was always a huge help to me when I was getting in the sport. We used to chat all the time, and he's I feel an underrated wealth of knowledge, and he's helped a lot of people out there.
Yeah, he's been around forever and still in it. And I would definitely agree that he's underrated with the knowledge he has, and not as well known as he probably should be for as long as he's been involved and as many people as he's helped.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yes, I'd check out all of, if anyone's listening, for the people listening, I'd recommend checking out some of the the videos he puts out and all of that. And if you're in the area, definitely train with him. But is that who you got involved with who got you involved in the sport? Was Jesse, or you just found Strongman and he happened to be the person that was around?
So, kind of long story short, how I got involved. My freshman year, living in the dorms, my freshman year of college, I lived next door to a guy named Chuck Casson, and at that time he was kind of like a national level competitor, was making it to nationals, doing real well all over. Then like fast forward, 5 years, and I decided I kind of wanted to actually start lifting and taking it seriously. I thought I'd try powerlifting out, and was training with a couple buddies to do that. I don't remember if I saw Chuck doing something on Facebook or what exactly spurred me to do it, but I got a hold of him, and asked him where he trained and if I could ever come try it out, whatever. And that was like October 2010. And he told me he trained at Jesse's, and that's where he had always trained. And if I wanted to try it out, get a hold of Jesse and, try to come over some weekend and try some stuff out. So I did that, got a hold of Jesse, ended up going over there that weekend, tried it out, loved it, started training it more. I competed the first time in Strongman in February of 2011 and won that first contest. And then from then on was just pretty much hooked.
So you had fairly instant success in the sport.
Yeah. Even back then, I don't think it was as nearly as big as it is now, especially like on the coast. But kind of here where I live, it's not huge. There's plenty of people that do it, but it's kind of more spread out. So it's not like it's not like I went and won like a major contest, but even winning a local contest, your first one, like, makes you feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, it's always fun to, no one knows on Facebook if there was two people in it and you beat one other guy, or
right.
You beat 12 people, or you beat 80 people at nationals or whatever. No, it just it sounds good either way, but
yeah.
I know what you mean. So what sports did you play? What was your sports background, your athletic background before you started Strongman?
Mostly football, and then a little bit of track and field, like threw a little bit. I wrestled a couple years and then got out of that. My dad was a power lifter pretty much my whole life. When I growing up, watched him power lift, but for whatever reason, probably just because I was lazy, I never got into it, really lifting with him growing up. So then I ended up, I was on the team for a couple of years in Nebraska, the football team, just as a long snapper, but kind of got a little bit more into lifting with that, basically because I had to. And then after that, kind of had a couple of years where I just trained on my own, just to be lifting and training, whatever, just because I wanted to try to be strong, I guess. And then decided that I wanted to get back to being competitive, because I think once you have a competitive background, it's kind of always in your blood, and you always want to be competing in something.
Definitely.
So that's when I decided I'd try out powerlifting. And then Strongman appealed more to me just because it's a little bit more based on being athletic and whatnot, not necessarily just like some static monster can stand there and move weight. So tried that out, and it's kind of where I fit better, obviously. So pretty much my background, I don't have some like long list of being like an athletic star or something. I'm sure some people have, but just always been into athletics in some sort. So,
well, you did that's a D1 college, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big school. Yeah, I'm just making sure it's Nebraska we're talking about, not like some weird offshoot.
No, yeah, University of Nebraska. So that was
so that's a high level of athletics to, even if to be at, like
yeah.
So
I kind of fell into that one. I guess kind of got lucky and fell into it. They were looking for long snappers, and I did it. Got a hold of them, and they asked me to walk on, which at that time, Nebraska's walk-on program has always been a pretty big deal. But at that time, with the coaches that were there, then they scaled it back huge. So even being asked to walk on at that point was, I don't know, a big deal to me. So I did, and it's definitely a different lifestyle when pretty much you're trying to basically your life is going to school and then practice and whatnot. And so I think it helped set me up a little bit for the mindset now of where basically everything is almost centered around training and competing and being able to train at a high level all the time. So it's not like you kind of cut out a lot of the extra activities most normal people would do, I'd say.
Yeah, because you just don't have time for it.
Right. So at 18 years old, when you're like sitting there trying to figure out how your friends have time to like go to the mall during the week, and it like blows your mind that they have time for that. It changes your mindset a little bit about what's important and what's not.
For sure. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that you're like, oh, I just don't have that much of an athletic background, but yet you played at a made one of like a prestigious, college football program and walked on. Long snapper from what I know it's like a niche position, but
Yeah.
you still, you know, they let you on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was kind of funny too, because that's honestly not something I talk about a lot or like make a big deal about.
Yeah.
I did that at all.
Sure.
Uh, and at Worlds, it was right before we got started on Stones. And Aaron Taylor was like, he was there obviously just kind of watching, since he announces a lot of it. And I was talking to him, and he asked me basically the same question, like what my athletic background was. And I just like mentioned that I was a long snapper at Nebraska. And then like, of course, that's something he says on air. I was like, God damn it. I don't like, it's not something I really wanted, that I really said to like put out there, whatever.
Yeah, that's a interesting. That's interesting because I've obviously talked to a lot of different strongman athletes, that are at a high level in the sport now, pros like yourself that played high level college football, and they're very similar. I mean, my good friend, Obi never talks about his
Right.
college football days, and he played at he played at Arkansas,
Yeah.
which is a huge school, and I wonder if that's because like obviously if you're playing college football, the goal is then to go pro. So because you didn't or something, then it's just kind of like, oh well, I wasn't good enough. It's just, and there's other, like Adam Scher played, I think at a pretty
Yes.
high level, and like they don't really talk about it. They talk about playing football,
some
but
guys, yeah, some guys, it probably is that. Like, for me, I just don't want people to like, to, I don't know, I make that my identity or whatever. Like that I was a college football player. Like I'm not like, I'm a strongman. Like I'd rather be recognized for that than people asking me about football at this point.
Well, yeah, it's what you're doing now and what you put all your energy towards, and that was
And yeah, and also like living in Nebraska football is a huge deal. So if it's something that you like advertised you did, that's all anyone ever wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. So
okay.
I just don't talk about it a lot.
So going off of football, I'm getting the hint.
Yeah.
No. But
right.
I'm just messing around. But so you get involved with strongman, you win your first contest. Then what was like when you got up that next you start, you're like, okay, I think you're what, like 6'5", so you're like, I'm pretty, maybe I can.
No, I'm only 6'2", actually.
Oh, you are? Why do you seem so tall? Maybe it's because I'm so short.
I don't know.
I thought you were a little taller. My bad.
It's all right.
Well, a lot of people in the world, they lie about their heights anyway. So.
Oh yeah, I would say a lot of people. I can't tell you how many people I've competed against. You get up next to them, and
you're like, you're 6'5"?
Everywhere you see a bio, whatever, it's like 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". You stand next to them, like, you're like an inch taller than me. Why are you lying about how tall you are?
Yeah, it goes back to all the like the wrestling days where you're 7'5" and 500 pounds. It's because the other guy says he's 6'6", so then you automatically have to be 6'6" as well. You don't want to be. It's I've always said that you have to have you have to be somewhat arrogant to even like I want to be world's strongest man someday. Like that's such a like ego driven. Like if you think that of yourself, you have to have like a pretty healthy ego. So it kind of goes in line where if that guy says he's 6'6", then no one's going to admit they're an inch shorter. It's the
Right.
you always have to be
Yeah.
more. But
Yeah.
so at barely 6'2", you were pretty good for this. You're doing pretty good in the sport. Thought I could do good at this. You start setting out some goals, like you want to go pro, etc. What was like how'd that process go in like your first big contest?
Um, my first big contest was actually not for a while after I started competing
Mm-hmm.
because so when I started strongman, like the first time I went over to Jesse's, I was like maybe 230 pounds. Like was not very big. And I competed like at 265, and I did really well that entire year up until August. I think I won every contest I entered except one, and the one I lost, I got second to Jacob Bodie, which like later on that year, I think he was a lightweight pro at that point, and I think later on that year won his heavyweight pro card. So
Yeah.
not a bad dude to get second to.
No.
Uh, but in August of that year, Bryan Shaw put on his first contest.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if you were there. I know
there.
OB was there. I
Yeah.
thought you were there.
Yeah.
And I dropped a stone on my foot.
That's right. I don't.
So
I didn't know. I don't think we really talked or met at that contest, but I remember someone getting injured in the stones.
yeah,
So I guess that was
so
you.
that was me. Yeah.
That's no fun.
So I dropped a 400-pound stone on my foot, and the stone actually didn't do any real damage. But I ended up getting a really bad infection and almost lost my foot.
Jeez.
So I didn't compete. I was obviously planning on going to nationals that year. I didn't compete at all until like spring of 2012 again. And even at that point, because my foot had been so messed up and like lost so much time training and everything, I still did well when I started competing that year, but just didn't really feel ready to go to nationals because I'd gained some weight too. So like I don't know, I didn't really feel like I probably should have gone, but just didn't. I didn't. And so really the first big contest I did was nationals in 2013. So like October 2013, and I did shitty. Like I went in expecting to do really well, and didn't. And
in lovely Denison,
kind of
Texas.
Yeah, I think that was the second year. Wasn't it there 2 years? Or was it only there when I was there one?
Yeah, it was
So
there
yeah,
one.
but I didn't do as well as I thought I would. There wasn't like a single event. If I remember right, that I felt like I did as well as I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of on the 10-hour drive home, took some time and like really thought and like was honestly debating if I wanted to get out of it, what I wanted to do, like if I wanted to try to turn things around or just focus on something else or what I was going to do, and decided to stick with it. Got myself a lot, increased some static strength and some other stuff. And then Nationals of 2014, I won the 300-pound weight class, went to the Arnold, and got second at the Arnold, and that's where I won my pro card.
Yeah, because you were the top placing American is how that works.
Yeah, and that to this day, almost 2 years later, I think about that contest every day. I think because I got second by half a point, which lost me out of being able to compete with the pros the next year.
Sure.
So,
which is a huge deal. Who was that the year that Kilkowski won?
That was the year before me. The year that I got it was Alexander Lysenko.
Oh,
in
right,
Russia.
right. Yeah, Russian guy.
Yeah.
That's who it was. Yeah, I think that was like the 1 year at the Arnold I missed. But I want to go back to that. I think it's crazy that when Shaw threw that contest, I guess it makes sense because Brian Shaw throws his first contest ever. Is you look at the how many pros ended up competing at that show or that are now pros.
Right.
Like right, so you have you yourself, Robert Oberst, Dimitar Savatinov, John Posen.
Right.
And I'm
There,
sure some
there's also
others.
quite a few lightweight guys there that
Yeah,
are
Tyler
pros now
Stickle.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And then you just have people like me that just didn't really do anything afterwards. But yeah, there's a lot of it's funny how there's always that like those certain contests that everyone from there gets that next level from.
Right.
But so how like competing at the Arnold, the amateur, it's a it's a huge deal. You're up on. How did it feel when you're up on the main stage? I think I harp on this all the time because it's like the only regret I have in the sport is not being up on that main stage ever. So I just,
Yeah.
because it seems cool. How was that?
Um, honestly, that's the biggest reason that I hate that I didn't get to go compete with the pros the next year, because it was like such an unbelievable experience just being up there, and like competing in that big of a crowd, that big a contest, where it's a little bit different contest too, because there's so many people there, and almost every single person there is into lifting or training or fitness or whatever in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably one of the only contests you'll ever do where the entire crowd at least somewhat understands what you're doing, and can appreciate it. So um, it, it was nerve wracking for sure, but once you get up there, get in front of the crowd, and like my year, the first event was the max logs. Get that first lift out of the way. Then, at least for me, kind of just get up there and focus on the implement, what you have to do, and you don't even really notice the crowd after that. But just knowing where you competed and what it means is a pretty big deal still.
Yeah, and I was talking to Ken Nowicki past weeks. He said it's just hot up on the stage because all the lights, or maybe he's just from
Uh,
from
I'm
Scotland.
hot.
And
I'm hot all the time.
yeah, you
I'm
live in
hot all the time
Nebraska.
anyway. So yeah,
a
I don't remember. Yeah.
little different, but yeah, that's kind of what I'd guess is you kind of look out. There's lights everywhere, and it just turns into a blur
Yeah.
with everything else. But yeah, I get that. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. So it's like you get your pro card, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to move on to bigger and better things. But then you're still kind of like, well, I want that experience again.
That's kind of how I felt about nationals too, really, because I
Hmm.
I competed at nationals twice, and nationals is a super fun contest. Um, and so after I won my pro card, it's like well, it kind of sucks because I kind of wanted to do some of those contests again, but then you have to think that, like, yeah, that's a really stupid thought, because now look at the contest that it opens up for me to compete in. So
Sure. I don't think it's a stupid thought. It just depends on how you look at it. Less so for the heavyweights, but everyone talks about pro cards and all that, and being competing at 175 as a lightweight. I've had a lot of people say like comments like it's stupid that there isn't a pro card. I'm like, well, it would just limit the opportunities I get to do.
yeah,
There's just not the base of or the demand really. So what's the point? If you're going to compete at the Arnold and you can get up on the main stage in front of countless thousands of people, I would not want to be limited to do that. If I was a 175 to get a pro card, to then compete where is the way
right.
I see at it. I look at it, but so yeah, no, I get it. So you like that kind of contest when there's 60, 70 people, and so that there's like no margin of error like nationals.
Um, I I do. I think I don't necessarily know that I like that type of contest over a little bit smaller contest, but it it's fun because it's always a big venue. There's a ton of people. There's not a margin for error,
None.
but at the same time, you don't have to win every event to win. Like if you just place in the top five every event, you're probably going to win your weight class at least
Yeah.
if you're that consistent. Um, so that's kind of nice too, and also just the number of events. It's not like you show up to like comparing that to like Giants Live, for instance. Show up to a contest where there's 5 or 6 events and there's 10 dudes. Like you do bad on one event and you're done.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
So um,
Well,
I
there's
like both, but Nationals was fun. Nationals was fun, and the Arnold was a ton of fun too.
they're kind of like it's kind of like a big high school reunion for strongman in a way or something. Uh, like
Yeah,
there's
you
no
you see you see everybody.
yeah. It's like you get to see everyone like twice a year, pretty much. So
Yeah,
that's the biggest the cool part I feel about those about nationals and the Arnold.
I think it's the same at every level of the sport, though. You could even if you're competing internationally, you show up one time and meet some people, and then you're pretty much friends from then on. And every time you see each other, you're gonna be friends and talk and hang out, or follow you pay attention to each other on social media and talk. Keep up with each other and whatnot, pretty much forever. It's not like some other sports, I think, where you probably know the people you compete against, but outside of seeing them, if you compete, you never interact and never have anything to do with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it is that how you felt it was when you move up to the pro level and then there's like a tight knit group of pros?
I think it's even a more so like just a tight knit group because it's not a real large group, and especially in the U.S. because there aren't a ton of pro competitions in the U.S.
Yeah.
That pretty much it's the same group of guys competing in almost every contest.
Yeah, there's just not too many opportunities once
Yeah,
you get the pro card, and then the question you're always kind of trying to, you're networking with each other so you can know if something is coming up you can compete in
yeah.
as well. So was your first pro contest the Giants Live in North America, or am I missing something?
Um, what was it? My very first pro contest was um, a year before that, the Giant Five qualifier, and that was Core Fitness put that on too in Indiana.
Mm-hmm. And that one was set up like a was no, that one was like a full contest. It wasn't like the
Yeah,
deadlift deal.
yeah. Um, I think it was just open entry too, but it was a Giant Five qualifier. First place was guaranteed a spot at Giant Life from it. Um, I took second place at that contest, and I got invited to Giants Life Poland that would have been last September, but that contest ended up getting canceled for some reason or another.
Hmm.
So that would have been my first Giants Live contest, but then didn't end up getting to compete in one until last June.
Back in Indiana,
Yeah,
which I think's a better was a better move anyway. Visiting Poland, from what I've heard from people that have competed there, is like the fandom is insane, and like the crowds for strongman because they from
yeah, that's what I heard too.
Marius and everything obviously has built up the recognition of the sport there a lot, but also because of that, like there's a lot of good competitors that come to Poland. So like that's a murderer's row when you go to a Giants Live. Like out of all of them, um, from what I've heard, they're
Yeah,
tough.
I don't I don't remember the exact lineup that it was going to be, but I think there was 3 or 4 guys that were just Polish guys that were all World Strongest Man competitors, and a couple of them like finalists even already at that point. So not a real easy contest to
No, not at
try
all.
to go qualify for the world at.
Yeah, so it's you want to test yourself, but at the same time, like if I'm thinking strategically, you also kind of want the easiest road. Like if the goal is to get to World's Strongest Man, you don't want to beat yourself up to get there. Um,
Right, and at that point, my goal was basically to get to a giant slide contest
mhm,
and hopefully perform well enough to get invited to another one.
sure. And I think something that people, it's always confusing because it says like the official word is that like top three at a Giants Live contest gets you to Worlds, but in reality, if they see you and they like you and you fit where they need a body from a certain country, you can get, people have got, eighth at those contests and then still went to Worlds or seventh, etc. Um,
Yeah, or the other thing is the top 3 or 4 or 5 places, because enough guys compete at multiple giant slide contests.
mhm,
The top 3 or whatever few places could already be guys that are already invited to Worlds, and so
sure.
then they can choose to go below those for some invite slots.
Yeah, it's just I feel people that follow the sport, I get questions like this where they get confused on what the qualifying process is, and it's not as it's not cut and dry like that. It's
Right.
I look at the stuff like the Giants Live contest as like an audition in a way.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened with me at Giants Live USA. I got I got fifth place, but then I kind of looked at like who the 4 guys were in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
two, um, and Colin and Darren basically just they told me after the contest it wasn't guaranteed, but just make sure that I'm training and ready to go to Worlds. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not just cut and dry like top 3 are guaranteed and everything else after that is nothing. But
yeah, and I remember we had a couple conversations about it, and I told you that I'd say that your chances were pretty high, just going
yeah,
by no official. Not that I know any inside information, just following the sport and kind of seeing how things go. My opinion, how it would end up. But glad to see that you ended up going to Worlds. But how was competing at that Giants Live contest? First off, it looked extremely hot and horrible out there, and like in a dust bowl.
yeah. It's my understanding that they had a different venue picked out and something happened with it, and so they had to move it to where they had it. So it was um, in kind of like just like an arena type thing. So it was dirt and it was fine. But it was crazy hot that day. Um, like I remember thinking the day before they told us that they wanted to have it be a 3-hour contest, and with 6 events, you're thinking like half an hour an event seems like a crazy pace to go. I think we ended up finishing in like closer to 4 hours.
Still fast.
But had it been a contest, a typical contest, how most contests are run, um, and if it would have been 5 or 6 hours, I think there would probably have been a lot more problems with guys cramping or having to pull out, getting injured, whatever, like strictly from heat because it was so hot. Uh, me, OB and I were actually getting in my rental car in between events and just had it running with the AC on full blast, just sitting in there trying to like cool down a little bit in between stuff. And it was actually the heat was still a problem for me. I was drinking a liter of water, usually like a Gatorade with extra electrolytes, and eating between every event. And still, by the time I got to the stones, I think I loaded the first 3, and I went to load the fourth, and I cramped from like my neck to my toes.
It's lovely. Yeah.
So never had that happen before.
Yeah, especially when you have a probably, close to 400-pound stone in your arms and cramp like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think who was it? I think it was Dave Ostlin that said that no one wins in strongman. It's just who survives.
Pretty accurate, probably.
There's some truth to that when you're doing
Yeah,
contests with that heavy a weight and that level. Um,
yeah. And that contest was interesting for me because um, it was the first contest of that caliber I'd done where I felt almost out of place. Like every other person that was there competing that day were, some of them multiple time World Strongest Man finalists, competitors. Pretty much all of them had been competing international and everything, and then it's like me. So
well,
it felt almost out of place, but not was still pretty happy to get to do it.
you hung in there, and fifth's not shabby at all with the that lineup. You had Mark Felix, Nick Best, Derek Devon, Obi, of course,
Yeah.
other people.
And
Jerry
yeah,
Pritchett, right, or Dimitar.
yeah, yeah. I think that the top three was Nick Best, Derek Devon, Mark Felix, and then Jerry, and then me. So don't feel too bad about getting fifth behind those guys.
No, not at all. Like that's like we're saying that's showing you belong. It's like, okay, here's some of people that are pretty always right there in their heats or usually making the finals, and you're right behind them. So that's
Yeah,
showing that you belong.
yeah.
It's like it's an audition, like I was saying earlier. But yeah, you do that contest, you're up in the air. But I think did you win the loading, or did Nick get a little quicker than you?
Um,
Because you're always really fast at medleys. I'd say if
I got I got second by like a little over a second, I think, to Derek Devon actually.
oh yeah, Derek's yeah, all three of
Yeah,
those. It's a good lineup of people that are good at those medleys like that. You Derek and Nick
yeah.
Best. But I want to get into a little bit. So what you talked earlier that talk about your training, but you said that you had to bring up some of your static lifts to get better at strongman. Is that were the moving events and being fast and being good at medleys what came a little easier, and then you had to improve stuff like the log, or am I off with this?
Um, no, that's pretty spot on. My wrestling now is a pretty strong event for me in
Mm-hmm.
general,
Yeah, it seems like
but
it
I'm
shot up
still,
quick, but
yeah.
I'm
So
not I'm not training it. I'm not you doing it every day. It might not seem as fast, but it's just
well, the crazy thing, it did actually go up really fast. When I hurt my foot, I gained some weight, and then like basically the only thing I could train was upper body, and even at that point, was still training it pretty light when I did. But it was like as soon as I could get back on my feet and actually press again,
mm-hmm.
my press just immediately went up, 50, 60, 70 pounds.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a oh, man. Yeah, gaining weight does a lot for pressing strength. I've
Yeah, because that actually, it went the other way for me more recently. Like I just had, a bunch of like personal crap going on
sure.
earlier in the year. And so going into Giants Live, um, I was like literally 50 pounds lighter than I was a year before. Um, Training had been garbage. My diet had been garbage. Like my training and that was probably the worst it had been going into any contest, let alone that big of contest. And kind of got thrown into it and went and did it, and then had worlds, shortly after that, and nothing was really that much better. So, but yeah, losing weight kind of sucks. And I actually, especially when it's not really, you're not choosing to do it. And I actually had a conversation with Michael Struzes, who just won his pro card in LA.
Yep.
So I don't know, might have been August or whatever. We were talking about that because he had the same thing where he had lost some weight, and we were talking about how there's like it seemed like we had this like 300-pound set point where like when you're over 300 pounds, training's a lot better, strength's a lot better. You don't have, you feel better in general. Then it's like as soon as you get under 300 pounds, certain things, especially like pressing, goes down. The big thing that we were talking about is you have all these like little naggy injuries that all of a sudden just pop up and won't go away. It's like, I brought that up to some things that I had going on, and he's like, yeah, like had similar stuff. And so I don't know, having a little bit more body weight, especially when you're training for contests like that and training a little bit heavier and whatnot, makes a huge deal.
Yeah, and it also, if you kind of look into it a little more, if you're at a heavier body weight, you're probably consuming more calories, which is going to fuel your training that
Yeah,
much more
for sure.
anyways. But yeah, I know I was always the same way, to a lesser degree because it's lesser body weight, but it still has an effect. Like if I stayed 180, like 190, 185, my pressing felt amazing. And then you start to cut to compete at 175 and you get to a point of like, fuck, it feels like dog shit being 182. It's like a 5 pound,
Yeah.
there's like once I got like 5 pounds less, then it just feels like you lost, like your leverage has just changed that much where your sleeves aren't as tight and the rack position's just,
Right.
a little looser or whatever. But
Yeah, and even talk like the year before when I competed at the Arnold, I was like pushing 330 when I was at the Arnold. So, March, April the year before, and then going to Giants Live, so June, so just over a year later, I was like mid 280s.
yeah, it's a big difference.
So like, yeah, like a 40, 50 pound weight swing makes everything feel different.
For sure. And yeah, it's just you're having more mass to deal with the loads that you have to move at that level. I feel helps.
Yeah. Or even just leverages, or even, stupid little things that you probably wouldn't think about. Like if you got a little bit of a belly and you can get a log on top of that to clean it, that makes it a little bit easier. That goes away and you have to like relearn how to clean the log.
Yeah, you actually have to use your muscle then. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you can just, you got to like, pinch your shoulder blades together and row it into your stomach so it doesn't roll down. And it's like, oh, it's hard to do that
Yeah,
compared to
to
just
try a little
resting it on your gut.
And I say that like jokingly, but also not, because it was actually something that I struggled with, that I was having a lot harder time cleaning the log. And it was because I was having a lot harder time keeping it like up higher on my chest because I didn't have anything to like rest it on and help me out.
No, yeah, I'm being sarcastic, but it's 100% true.
Oh,
like,
no, yeah.
I tell people all the time, they're like, I can't continental, an axle without, because I'm skinny. It's like, well, you can. You just actually have to like use muscle mass. Like you have to use your upper back to hold it into you and be strong enough to do that. And
right.
But it's, there's advantage, then there's the disadvantage is you see some real big, portly guys have trouble with stones. They're too far out in front of them. Events like that, or any sort of carry. Like you do a Husafelt and you're putting it that much further out in front of your body because you got a big old gut. It doesn't help. So there's definitely a balance of that perfect power belly ratio that you need.
We should do some research and find out what that is.
Yeah, we'll do that's like that should be like the next science of strongman, like the forarmer wrote for the site about like the car deadlift, doing the science on to have enough belly to be able to clean a log and an axle, and not too much that a Husafelt's 3 feet out in front of your hips.
Or that you can do a carry medley and you die after one implement.
Yeah. There's a good balance there for sure.
Yeah.
But so how do you actually structure your training? And what like you said, yeah, only being able to train upper body and gaining weight is going to improve your log. Though I think sometimes people they overcomplicate things when it's really that simple.
Yeah.
But
it can be too. Yeah. What I do and have done for a long time is pretty much during the week, and it's just during the week because we've always trained strongman events on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So during the week is, just like is gym lift. So I squat, I press, and I deadlift. Essentially, that's my 3 days during the week. There's a squat day, a press day, and a deadlift day. I do other things with those, and sometimes I'll throw in, some type of more dynamic event work with those days. So like on a squat day, might do some, dynamic stone loading or something like that. Just light. And that's actually something I've been doing, just lighter stones, no tacky, no anything, just go in, do some quick reps, just to feel it. And I think it helps. I think that helps kind of training events a little bit differently. Instead of every time you do stones, you got to put all your equipment on and tack you up and everything like that. Like having a mindset, you can just walk up to a stone and pick it up and load it without all that stuff probably helps too. Mm-hmm. But then on Sunday still, it's more an event training day. So usually 2 to 4 events, depending on what I'm going to do, go train those that day.
Yeah, depending on the contest. And do you, like you're saying, you do some lighter stuff during the week? Does this change if you're more in the off season, or you're getting closer to contest? It becomes more specific towards the events in your gym
it's
training
actually
during the
something
week?
It's actually something that I've been doing more recently than ever before.
Okay.
I always tried to figure out how to fit events in during the week with my regular training, and I don't know, I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And I've had people doing programming for me, and do now actually. My buddy Brett Carter, that owns Omaha Barbell, does programming for me, and then Jesse helps me out with some strongman stuff too. Mm-hmm. But it seems like it's almost too much for me to try to figure out and fit in to train too many events during the week, and to be working on the things I need to work on to get statically stronger. So I don't do a lot of it. So actually, recently, like off-season wise, I tore my quad at Worlds. So trying to heal that up and, just get healthy in general has been my main priority. But I've also been doing more of that, I guess, in the off-season now, and probably will keep some of it in. But once I actually start training heavier events and get more serious about event training, I'll probably cut that stuff out during the week, just to help with recovery a little bit. So if I'm training heavier stones on an event day, it's probably not super beneficial to do some light dynamic loading during the week if I've already done it, or it's just going to hurt recovery more than help anything.
Sure, but yeah, right now in your off season, it's just a good way to get in some practice on the implements while still, increasing your gym lifts and your overall static strength. And I think it's always important to note that the demands for a training is very different between a heavyweight pro and then, let's say, someone who's, going to compete at a little below the national level as a 200-pound guy. It depends on how strong you are already. If you want to be at Worlds and be in the finals, like, you need a 400 something pound overhead. You need a 900 plus pound deadlift. You need to be able to run with 1,000 pounds. Like, that takes a lot of building just your overall strength to then be able to apply it to the implements. Versus,
right.
If my yoke's going to be 600 pounds, my squat's probably good enough. I just need to worry about getting faster with that. Like if I squat 400 some pounds, it's fine. It's different.
And it's different for me compared to guys that have been at that level for a while too, mm-hmm. because statically, honestly, I'm just not strong enough statically. So have to concentrate a lot more on building static strength versus almost being able to like maintain and build a little bit where you're at and just get better and just being better at events so you do better at contests. Like I just have to be stronger so I can make it through a contest.
Sure. Yeah. Completely understand. And that's why I just think it's important to note for people
Yeah.
listening. They would think, oh, I should follow this guy's program. And it's like, well, where are you and what is the level you're trying to compete at? And what are your strengths and weaknesses? That's why, there's no one size fits all program. But so how was Worlds? First off, how long, like it was up in the air if you were going to Botswana. So when did
Yeah.
you actually figure that out? How long
Um,
before the contest?
I think it was about 3 weeks before the contest. I was told I was an alternate and I was going, but didn't know if I was going to be competing.
Mm-hmm.
And then roughly a week before I left, I was told that I was going to be competing for sure. So, it was only, what was it, like 4 or 5 weeks between Giants Live and World. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to really, I basically just had to go train some things and make sure that I was, proficient as much as I could be just all around anyway. It wasn't like I was going to go get stronger or a whole lot better at anything. So that wasn't a huge issue to be pretty short notice. But yeah, it was really short notice to get the invite and go. Seemed like a lot of stuff was just last minute, but I think it was last minute for everyone. So
yeah, welcome to being a pro strongman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I'm not going to complain about it being last minute because at least I got the invite and got to go. So.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's interesting for people to hear kind of how like the behind the scenes what actually, because everyone just they watch it on Christmas Day, or with their family, and they're like, oh, all these people they trained all year, they knew it's like it kind of just comes together.
Yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind summer for me like that because I got invited to Giants Live. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks before that contest that I actually got invited there too. So it was 2 kind of last minute contest invites in a row.
Yeah, it seems like that's once you become pro, there's just less and less. You,
There,
you like you said, like if you're nationals, like the events, you end up knowing them well, and people complain about like the events aren't up, the weights aren't up.
right.
At nationals, then you're a pro, and you don't even know until you show up a lot of the time, or it's just completely changed. So.
Well, I think I've definitely talked to people about that, and I think you and I might have even talked about that at some point. That it's almost, I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's almost ridiculous how much people complain and how much information they expect for amateur contests, and even like smaller amateur contests. They want to know the exact weights, the manufacturer's equipment, what time they're going to start, how much time's between events. Like they want every detail of everything they can possibly get. And then as a pro, it's basically like you don't have any information about anything. Almost everything's like seems like it's last minute. There's no website like Starting Strongman, or you can't go to Strongman Corporation or USS website or whatever and see a whole list of contests that are coming out. Like you don't know about contests unless you know promoters or people that are putting on the contest or in the contest. There's not a whole lot of information as a pro, and especially if you're competing overseas, like you're not gonna be able to train on the same piece of equipment. So at this point, it kind of makes me laugh when people see that a certain equipment manufacturer is going to be at a contest, and so they go out and buy all their equipment. Like,
Yeah.
Just training it good on the stuff you have, and it probably will translate.
I mean, it helps to have the exact equipment, but does it, $3,000 worth of investment help? you know,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know. It depends on. I guess if you own a gym and you have a bunch of people training, it's one thing, but yeah, you can make a hobby real expensive real quick. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's expensive as enough if even you're trying to be cheap about it, but Yeah, I do think it's funny as well. But so how was Worlds, like the experience there? Obviously, you said earlier you weren't too happy about how you did, but I watched your heat, and you had a good. From what I saw, they don't show everything. It looked good. You came off well. So
Um, the experience in general, it was almost it was pretty much overwhelming at first to be there. Um, and people asked me before I actually left, like, oh, you're going to Worlds, like, you like, I'm sure that was a goal, like you've made it, like how's it feel? Like it was pretty much just surreal at that point. And even then when I got there, it kind of sunk in, like, all right, I'm actually here. You know, it's not, even when I won my pro card and started to compete as a pro, it's still something that seemed like so far off that it um, was kind of crazy that I got there. Then actually there, and you start seeing all these guys that you've seen competing at Worlds and at various contests, and even looked up to or admired or whatever for a long time, and see you're there with them to compete against them, gets a little bit more overwhelming. And the contest in general, there's probably not another contest like it where you show up a few days before you even compete and have all this stuff you have to do, and then you go compete, but you're only doing one or two events a day. So the competition, even just prelims, is stretched out for 4 days, and then you're there for another day or whatever before you leave. So it's so much different. It was hard to, I don't know, it was hard to think of it as as a different contest, but it was. But after being there for a couple days, even before you competed, you met everybody, kind of realized that everybody's in the same boat with being there and short notice, competing, and what you have to do, and everyone is like super tight knit, super helpful, really nice. So it eases a lot of that, and it just becomes, kind of like, all right, you're here, you know what you have to do, just kind of relax and try to go out and go do it. And there's a few things, that you'll never forget. Like there was one night, it was one of the first nights I was there. I was walking back to my room, and Kazmaier stopped me. He's like, "Hey, Bryan," and I was just saying to myself, like, how the fuck did this guy even know my name? Like, how does he even know who I am? He like stopped me and like pulls me aside and gives me, talks to me a little bit and like gives me a hug, and I go on my way. It's just like almost like, did that really just happen? Like, did Bill Kazmaier just like pull me aside and talk to me and give me a hug? Like, what the hell?
that's pretty cool.
So, yeah, ton of cool stuff. It's definitely one of those contests that being there one time, like no matter how you did, it's going to drive you and push you to want to be back as many times as you can possibly make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a similar experience when I was at the Kaz Classic with Kaz, and he was doing a seminar, and he singled me out, and he said, but he kept calling me Kelly the whole time. And then I remember someone else came up and they're like, weren't you getting pissed when Kaz kept referencing you as Kelly? And I was like, no, it's Kaz. He kind of knows my name. Like this, like,
Yeah.
Like I'm not mad.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah.
It was fun. So like you're saying, it's hard to find a contest, that's coming up. So what's next for, what's on the horizon for 2017 with obviously you want to get back to Worlds and all that, but what's the immediate process to get there?
Yeah, so like I said, I tore my quad at Worlds, and I'd been a little bit banged up going into it, which didn't obviously didn't help with that. And then trying to just kind of get everything healed up, whatever. And I wanted to compete at the Cats Classic, but just I wasn't ready. Like, kind of still quad still healing up, everything else. So I think realistically, probably the next contest I'm going to do. I can't even remember the name of the contest, but the one in North Carolina in April.
Mid-Atlantic.
The Mid-Atlantic, yeah. So I've signed up for that. So realistically, that's probably the next contest I'm going to do. I thought about, there's another Arnold one of the foreign Arnold qualifiers in Indiana in February. I thought about doing that too, but I'm just now getting back to the point to really be able to train events hard and everything. And I don't know if I'll quite be at the level I'd want to be to go compete to do that. So I might hold off.
Sure, a little too soon. But yeah. It seems like Mid-Atlantic's what everyone keeps saying.
It appears to be, yeah. It's going to be a big contest.
Yeah, and I'm going to be there. I need to buy my damn plane tickets. They're probably went up like $100 and something bucks since I looked. I'm like, oh, it won't be too bad. And I told Lynn, yeah, I can make it out there. That's not too bad. And I'm gonna check. It's gonna be like, $600 something now. Let's hope not.
Hopefully not. yeah. Like, I look at it that it's nice that I live in Omaha and there's at least an airport right here. Like, I don't have to drive 2 or 3 hours to get to an airport to fly anywhere.
Sure.
But flying in and out of Omaha sucks because it's always expensive no matter where you go when you book your tickets. Like, if you can find a flight for under $350 to anywhere out of Omaha, you're doing pretty good.
So that plays into what contest you end up wanting to do?
Not really, because I mean, like we talked about earlier, there's not a ton of contests to do.
Sure.
So you can't really be too picky. I actually after Worlds, actually even before Worlds, I guess probably last year, actually, when the LA Fit Expo was going on, I had planned on competing in it this year, but again, just wasn't quite there, so didn't do it. So not knowing really what contest there's going to be after April, it's probably the one I'm planning on for right now, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it looks like a good contest. I like the events. They seem fun, and from everything I've heard, Lynn puts on a great show. Lynn Morehouse, and there's information on that one at trainstrongman.com for this contest, and it's an amateur contest as well. If anyone else, and there's a team contest the next day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
all at the same thing. So there's a lot going on. If anyone else is interested in that, so
the one thing I appreciate about that contest, honestly, is that it seems like lately there's been more pro contests, in the U.S. to compete in, but they've all been pro-am, so they're basically just open entries.
Yeah.
And the one thing I appreciate, like really appreciate that Lynn did, is that the entry was free for pros, even though it's an open entry pro-am contest, but he made the entry free to pros, which, it's kind of nice knowing that having your pro card at least gets you something. It's not like you're any guy off the street that gets to enter the contest and it doesn't mean anything.
And I think it's a good move by him. And I've had a lot of talks with Lynn, and I think he kind of gets it. Is the easy way to put it. Where if like you're doing a pro-am and he's trying to get sponsors for the events, getting some of the bigger pros out there is going to only help with that and help drive all the other amateurs to want to come compete. So it's a good investment. You might lose $100 a head for the pros, but you're probably going to gain that back by the interest in the show. And I think that's the way I see it.
Totally. If you have 10 or 12 pros enter, and even half of those are more well-known guys, you're probably going to have 10 or 12 more amateurs enter just so they can be there to compete against those guys.
Yeah, and it brings up the whole level, and you end up it's thinking with the long term, the overall view versus just dollar, looking at each dollar individually, which seems to happen
Yeah.
sometimes. But we don't need to get into all of that. That's a start getting hairy when you start talking too much with that. But yeah, I think that's a good move, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of people listening will probably be confused that isn't the norm every pro contest. That there sometimes still is an entry fee.
Yeah.
But that's why you listen to Strong Talk. you
Yeah.
gotta learn
Learn
something.
something every day.
You gotta learn what's going on. But appreciate you coming on. If people want to follow your training on social media, Instagram I believe is Benzel.
Yeah. Correct.
And
That's
anywhere else
um.
to follow that, or sponsors you have you want to mention?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you asking me to be on and
Of
taking the
course.
time to talk to me. So thank you. Um. Yeah. Instagram is definitely where I'm most active and post the most stuff. So if anyone wants to follow me, that's where to follow me. And yeah, it's just BBENZEL.